This was without a doubt one of the most influential and successful anime series to have ever been released in Japan and exposed to an international audience. But there's a whole lot more to it. This episode was requested, and I'm doing it as a favor for an old friend of mine. There is so much to discuss, everyone, so I'm going to narrow it down. There were 7 Dragon Balls, so I'm going to divide this narration into 7 sections of discussion. Hidden meanings. I don't actually think people know how many meanings there are in this series. There are a few. Let's go with some of the names of the characters in the series. Emperor Pilaf was actually a spoof on the dish rice pilaf. Tian Xinhan and Chaosu are also names of cities in China. Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta supposedly means radish for Raditz, Nappa cabbage for Nappa, and vegetable for Vegeta. Piccolo is also the name of a musical instrument. Son Goku is actually known as Son Wukong, the Monkey King in a classic Chinese story called Journey to the West. Oolong is actually oolong tea. This was mentioned in the story when Goku and Oolong first met. Kami means God. Kami-sama in the native Japanese Shinto religion of natural forces and essence. There's a reason why Kami's lookout is so high in the sky. It's meant to show the natural essence, the point between heaven and earth. General So was actually a person in real life and is the name of a common Chinese dish. Boma means bloomers. In Japanese, it's boruma, which can be a slang term for panties. Speaking of that, Chi-Chi also means slang for breasts, or can mean young girl, depending on how you say it. Both of these were mentioned in the series. Majin is Japanese for magician. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, that's also Cinderella reference besides the names of the characters. Shenron is a variation of Shenlong, meaning dragon god. In Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese cultures, dragons have various supernatural powers and in some cases can give out wishes. If anyone can name more, then give a comment, but please, give credible comments. Akira Toriyama and Gen Fukunaga. This is something that I read about and heard of a long time ago. Let me explain. In Japan, creators of manga have certain rights. It's similar to the rights given and protection had that American comic book writers have, for example. An idea can be pitched to a studio, and if this idea is good enough, the writer can make a series with that studio. It's common for manga writers in Japan to be both writers and artists. And in some ways, if you can't draw as well as write, you can and won't be hired. So Toriyama was the writer and artist for Dragon Ball and was currently doing Dragon Ball Z. This was the early 1990s, as Fukunaga was actually setting up a company. He wanted Toriyama to bring the series to this new company, Funimation, as the two immediately had issues with each other. The series was set to be introduced to the United States, and there were predictions that the series will become hugely popular there, as it was already in Japan. We're talking about manga sales, DVD sales of the animated series, and various related merchandise. This added up to a lot of money, so Toriyama was taken off the series. He would still have a high rank and influence in the development of the series, but he had no longer absolute control as he did before. This is why there was a change in the series after the Frieza arc. This was the last arc that Toriyama had full influence over. It's not like he was kicked out after that. He was basically a creative consultant and even came up with character designs later on. I'm not sure if any of this is true, but I know most of it is. The movies. There have been some movies that are technically considered not part of the Dragon Ball timeline, sort of alternate stories, but some do have official status. The movies of Dragon Ball Z were Dragon Ball, retitled Return My Gohan in the Japanese, and Dead Zone in English, The World's Strongest, or The Strongest Guy in the World, The Tree of Might, or The Super Battle in the World, Lord Slug, or Super Saiyan Da Son Goku in Japanese, Cooler's Revenge, The Incredible Mightiest versus the Mightiest in Japanese, Return of Cooler or Clash of the Power of 10 Billion Warriors in Japanese, Super Android 13 or Extreme Battle, the Three Great Super Saiyans, Broly, the Legendary Super Saiyan, or Burn Up, a close, intense, super fierce battle in Japanese, BoJack Unbound, the Super Incredible Guy in Japanese, Broly's Second Coming, or The Dangerous Duo, Super Warriors Never Rest in Japanese, Bio Broly, or Super Warrior Defeat in Japanese, Fusion Reborn, or The Fusion of Resurrection, Goku and Vegeta in Japanese, Wrath of the Dragon, or Dragon Fist Explosion, If Goku Can't Do It, Who Will in Japanese. Also 3 TV specials such as Bardock, the Father of Goku, or A Lonesome Final Battle, the father of the Z Warrior Son Goku who challenged Frieza, The History of Trunks, and A Hero's Legacy, or Goku's Side Story, The Proof of His Courage is the 6-star ball. Now I'm not sure if any of these are considered officially part of the Dragon Ball timeline, but Bardock and Trunks would have to be, because those movies are at critical points in the timeline. Bardock, meaning that this would take place before Dragon Ball, and The History of Trunks, meaning this would give a backdrop into the alternate timeline where future Trunks or alternate Trunks was, what happened after Goku's death, and what drives him to go back in time and change history. As well as Wrath of the Dragon, because at the end of the movie, it's where Trunks gets the sword that he uses later on. The Saiyans and the transformations. The Saiyajin are also worth discussing. In the Japanese version, they are called Saiyajin. In the English, they're called Saiyan, an abbreviation. I think one point worth discussing is the transformations. When Goku first turned into a Super Saiyan when he fought Frieza, this was a huge event. But as the story went on and the characters became even more powerful, there was levels 2 and 3, and even level 4 of GT is taken seriously. Even toward the end of the series, there was in-between stages. They would be called Super, not Super Saiyan, like Super, then level 1, Super, then level 2, Super, then level 3. That's how powerful everyone was toward the end. It was rather ridiculous if you really think about it. Goku was the first to become Super Saiyan, as technically Trunks was the first to go to level 2 when he fought against Cell, but his muscles became too big and he lost speed. Gohan was the first to go to level 2 without the loss of speed and movement. Goku was again the first to go to level 3 and 4. I remember going to a website and seeing an explanation of that the level 1 was the first level and the legendary Super Saiyan Broly was the true level 2, and level 4 was the true level 3. Speaking of level 4, there's a lot of people who don't like it. First is that when Goku or Vegeta went to level 4, their clothes were automatically changed into the outfit worn when in the level 4 transformation. Also, the hair turns black again instead of yellow, added to the features of the fur on the body and the regrown tail. It would make sense to do this because levels 1 through 3 are essentially the same except for longer and spikier hair and more electric sparks emitted from the body. Toriyama had a hand in the level 4 design, so I guess this was in his head for a radical new transformation. Another fan argument is how powerful is Gohan's mystic transformation. Gohan isn't a diehard fighter like Goku, so I don't think he can go to level 3. So like I mentioned before, a substitute transformation is needed to make up for it. But how powerful is the mystic transformation really? I would say somewhere near level 3. A good example is that in the Budokai series, the mystic transformation has just as much power bars as the level 3 transformation that Goku has. But key attacks by Goku are stronger, so mystic Gohan is nearly powerful as level 3 Goku, but not quite. I hope that makes sense to you listening. The alternate timeline. When Trunks goes back in time to warn the others of the androids and the threat that they possess, he comes from a hellish alternate future world where Goku dies of a virus and the androids kill everyone except Gohan. With no one to stop them, they then destroy the world, and the people that survive are now in sheltered cities as the androids still go out and kill people. It's a systematic killing of all the people in the world. Genocide. Gohan, being the only Saiyan and defender of the world left, decides to train Trunks to help him try to finally defeat the androids. Gohan is attacked in battle and his arm is blown off. Trunks then trains harder, as Bulma decides to build a machine that would enable one of them to go back into the past and prevent this hell from happening. It's actually supposed to be Gohan that's originally meant to go back in time, but he's later killed by the androids, and Trunks would later discover his body as the shock, anger, and loss at the death of Gohan pushes Trunks to finally become a Super Saiyan, much like Goku when Krillin was killed by Frieza. So Trunks goes back in time and warns everyone, thus changing the timeline. But for Trunks to have gone back to the past means that the alternate Gohan and Trunks is not the alternate but true original versions of Gohan and Trunks that we see in the normal series. Added to that, Cell kills Trunks and went back in time again to the present, overlapping Trunks' original mission to go back in time to warn everyone about the androids in the first place. So essentially there were two outcomes overlapping back to the point where the timeline diverged, which was at the point where Dr. Gero and his android attacked that city, but the timeline was changed and Trunks succeeded in changing history, but not for his own timeline. What he did instead was create an alternate timeline where none of what happened in his time happened at all. When Trunks returned to his own home, the world was still destroyed, but Trunks was by that point strong enough to finally defeat the androids, kill Cell, and become the sole protector of the world in his time. But that was not the end of it. In the final movie, it explains how Trunks gets his sword that he uses later on in the series. But if this is to be taken into account, then the point where the timeline diverges is significantly pushed forward. I sort of think that how Trunks got his sword was just done to stop people from asking, like, hey, when does Trunks get his sword? How does he get it? I'm wondering about that. That's been bothering me. I remember some fan theories before the movie was released in America that the sword Trunks uses was actually the sword that Gohan used during his training before Vegeta and Nappa came to Earth. That Gohan gave it to him sometime before he was killed during the History of Trunks movie. But this can't be true because the swords look different. The sword that Gohan used and the sword that Trunks used. I hope this doesn't sound too confusing. It's an American comic book timeline style theory on a Japanese manga plot. On a final note, it's interesting to see the personalities of future Gohan and Trunks, as they are both different from the versions we see in the normal timeline. Future Trunks and Gohan are calm, collected, and serious, while Gohan and Trunks of the normal timeline are carefree, silly, and to a point obnoxious. It's most likely have to do with the androids and how it affected their lives. I personally like the alternate versions of Gohan and Trunks better. Grand Tour and Alternate Future. Not everyone likes GT. Dragon Ball had 153 episodes made. Dragon Ball Z had 291. GT just has 64. That's it. Apparently the Japanese were not so keen on the series. I even heard that GT was not based on manga at all. It was just a written for anime sort of thing. I'm not exactly sure if this is true though. There were a lot of criticisms with a lot of GT being similar to how Dragon Ball Z was, especially the ending. Also how Vegeta goes to level 4 right from level 2, bypassing level 3 altogether. A lot of people said it went against his code, not using any kind of help in attaining strength, because at the end of Z, Vegeta finally acknowledged that he would never become as strong as Goku. But one of the best things in GT was Pan. There are no girl fighters in the series. If you think about it, there's only Videl, Chi-Chi, 18, Launch, and this was a fresh new look on things. But I don't think Pan will be able to go Super Saiyan because I remember reading once that Toriyama originally had the idea that descendants of Goku would not be able to go Super Saiyan because of the Saiyan blood that would be diluted to a point where it wasn't possible. Goku's full-blooded, Gohan's half, so Pan would naturally be a fourth. It's logical. It makes sense to me. Now, when GT ended, there was a lot of unanswered questions, and one image started something. I remember seeing this image when the internet first came out. And this sparked a whole range of mysteries and rumors and questions. Dragon Ball AF, which means alternate future. What does that mean? Who knows, as AF is not official. Don't let anyone tell you that it is. I don't know anything about a proposed alternate future timeline, but one aspect I often hear is Raditz returning and is a Super Saiyan and some other things like that. Now, if AF is done, then alternate future can naturally mean that GT would possibly not be in chronological continuity, as I would agree to maybe erase GT from official continuity. There can be an alternate Pan, an alternate level 4 Super Saiyan, or even possibly a level 5 Super Saiyan. Let Toriyama continue the series and possibly do things differently. Maybe do things different, who knows, it doesn't hurt. It's also key to note that he has not exactly said that the door is closed on continuing the series. Who knows? He may return and we might see things different and the series continue. Lost in translation. Lastly, I want to comment on how the Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball GT series have been viewed outside of Japan. There have been some funny translations. A good example is the name of the characters, like instead of Son Goku, it's often be seen as Son Gokuo or Goku. The spelling. Krillin as Krillin, Keelan, Curran, Frieza as Frieza, Frieza, and Majin Buu as Majin Buu, once again with the spelling, which was the original translation. Also, when the Dragon Ball manga was first translated, there was some censorship attempts. I'm not sure if they still exist now, but with the first printings there was. Here's one chapter of the manga when it was released in 1998 in an American comic book style. This is the scene with Goku and Bulma where Goku learns the difference between boys and girls. Nothing wrong, it's just humor, but look at this. When the chapters are reprinted in a manga book style, the same scene with the Bulma and her panties, it's censored. This was first published in 2000. I'm not sure if this is still done, but this is what it was like when Dragon Ball was first brought to America. There was also the anime series, which I call Super Censored, because everything was edited so severely. There was no blood with the characters, no cursing, nothing like that. And when a character died, they were sent to the infamous next dimension. But besides that, there have been some really sad attempts. There was the Dragon Ball movie, the Evolution, Dragon Ball Evolution, which was horrible. Common sense would be race. I don't want this to be about that, but it is. A wholly Asian cast with a main character as a white guy, a European, a Caucasian. Do you know why this was done? It's to broaden the view of the movie to all people. If a Dragon Ball movie was made with an all-Asian cast or a mixed white and yellow cast, it would of course appeal to the fans of the series, but not really to the mainstream movie audience. It's not about race, it's about money. If the lead character is a Caucasian, then the film might become more widely accepted. But if the story was changed to make it more understandable for a Western audience, it doesn't have to be about a race argument when you see Goku's hair in the movie. A sad attempt to make it spiky. Now that's just plain bad. Besides the Dragon Ball Evolution, there was actually 2 other movies, both of which were unofficial. The first was Dragon Ball The Magic Begins, or The Story Begins. I actually saw this. It's a movie from Taiwan. I actually thought it was pretty good in a Chinese kung fu sort of way. And there was another movie from South Korea, Dragon Ball Fight Goku, Win Son Goku. The Taiwan movie was released in 1989, and the South Korean movie was released in 1990. Everyone has their own views as to how a Dragon Ball movie should and could be made, so I'll leave that up to you all listening to comment on. So what do people think? Rate the video and leave a comment.